Messi versus Ronaldo is the greatest rivalry ever. Notice how the word sports was intentionally left out of that description. Never before in any media or real life have we seen two figures as great as they were at their best, who also represented such opposite ends of defining success, yet their rivalry almost imitates a fictional story. I'm going to compare their rivalry to other media that I've watched or read on numerous occasions in this video, because their careers very much mimic a story where two protagonists are in constant conflict with each other. For them to have performed at such a high level for so long, a level higher than any other players, yet so close to each other, a mere 6-hour drive, is unprecedented. Then, they play the most popular sport, allowing their rivalry to be broadcast to more people than any other rivalry in sports before or after. They have each redefined the sport of football, and with their careers nearing their close, we must acknowledge the legendary nature of their rivalry, and despite what Ronaldo says, how they pushed each other to become greater, to become the greatest.
How much has Lionel Messi pushed you to become a better player? And the second part of that question, would you say that you two are the best players of all time, better than Pele, Maradona?
I'm pushed to myself. I don't need other players to push myself. I just work since I was in sporting. So
A crucial aspect to any great rivalry is yin and yang, finding the balance between our protagonists' similarities and differences. Messi and Ronaldo each have such unique backstories, yet they still find themselves in a similar position because of what they had in common. Messi was immediately anointed as the future of football. The way we regard Messi today as the greatest talent to ever touch a ball is the future they saw from him in Argentina. He was labeled the next Maradona at a young age. Long story short, he was way too young to be moving the way he was. There's a firefighter somewhere in Argentina right now that has a story about Messi leaving his ankles on the pitch somewhere in Rosario. So obviously, this level of talent won't go unrecognized for long. And like fate, the greatest football talent was attracted to the greatest football academy like a magnet. Well, I don't know if you can say fate, but more like a series of coincidences, which I guess technically is fate, but that starts to get into more philosophical than I really want to get to into this video. Anyway, we should all know this story by now. Messi gets diagnosed with a growth defect called growth hormone deficiency. His grandfather contacts Barcelona and tries to get them to help. They want to sign him because of his talent, and Barcelona steps in and is willing to pay for his treatment in exchange for Messi coming to La Masia. I just want to say that as someone who did not grow up watching football, this is a crazy concept to visualize. They were spending northwards of 15,000 euros a year on a 13-year-old's growth hormone serum because they thought he was cold on the pitch. He could have been terrible, and they would have lost all of that money for no reason. But as we know, that investment paid exponentially. Crazy foresight by them. So then we know Messi rises to the ranks of Barcelona, and after 18 seasons, 4 Champions Leagues, 10 league titles, 672 goals, and 7 Ballon d'Ors, he says his tearful goodbye to the club in 2021. It's a perfect love story, but unfortunately it lacks a happy ending. Ronaldo's backstory is slightly different. He wasn't considered the messiah of football, the next Maradona. He did nothing but play all day because he had nothing else to do. He eventually arrived at Sporting's Academy, which he initially hated, but he genuinely did not care about anything but playing, so eventually he made the A-team, was found by Sir Alex Ferguson, and was sold to Man United. And the rest is history. I will spend a lot of this video juxtaposing Messi and Ronaldo, speaking about how they are different, but I want to take a moment to highlight their similarities and what makes them both intriguing protagonists. As much as Ronaldo gets this reputation as pure hard work and Messi as pure talent, the opposite is also true for both. What characterizes both of them is that hunger and drive that comes from not having. Both of them were poor when they were younger. Their future told them that they would have to be great just to eat. So all they did was play football in hopes of becoming the best, which they were both able to achieve. But when you narrow the two down to Messi being talent and Ronaldo being hard work, you limit them to one part of their identity, but also you underrate the hard work that Messi put in, and you underrate the talent that Ronaldo possessed. Because I promise you cannot be as good as Ronaldo off just working hard. Some of it's got to be heaven sent, and Ronaldo had it. You don't get signed by one of the greatest coaches of all time at 18 by being a Rock Lee variant. He had some Kakashi to his game. To be as techie on the ball as Ronaldo has always been at his size is truly remarkable. He limited that in his game in favor of goal scoring as he got older, but that talent never goes away. He truly is one of the greatest talents in the history of football, although he does not get respected in that way. And Messi's hard work is so underrated. He would not have been able to play for as long as he has at this level which is unprecedented with the exception of Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, without hard work. For a period of time, they were calling Messi fat. Pep stepped in to change his diet, then he left, and Messi's fat ass went back to what he knew. Then, after losing the 2014 World Cup, he got serious about his diet again and snatched his shame back from Ronaldo, who had won the last two Ballon d'Ors, reasserting himself as the best player in the world. This is dedication to your craft. It's drive to be the best. He wasn't just gifted with all his ability from birth. Yes, it's true that Messi is a greater talent than Ronaldo, and as a result, Ronaldo had to work harder for his success, but don't ignore the other dimensions of their character. Our two protagonists first shared the stage at the 2007 Ballon d'Or ceremony. It was at this point where they first announced their greatness to the world, placing second and third behind Kaká. And it's honestly hilarious because they definitely had no clue they would be in such constant conflict over the next couple years. Their first on-pitch meeting was the next season. In the 2008 UCL, Ronaldo and United would go on to win the whole thing, which means in the semifinal, Messi and Barcelona were in the way. Actually, a moment before the game where they shake hands as clearly at this point the best and second best players in the world, but each has no clue of how their entire careers and identity will become intertwined. It's a cool moment because Ronaldo at this point probably knew he was going to Madrid at some point, and this man would soon be his greatest competition, but Messi had no clue. And we already know Messi is slow. He probably had no idea who he was even dapping up in that moment. It's a lot like Goku and Vegeta's first meeting on Earth. They fight initially trying to defeat each other, and Vegeta's trying to kill him, thinking this will be the last time they face each other. But by the end of the fight, Goku had such a blast almost dying that he knew he would spare Vegeta and they would fight again. Even though Goku planned to fight again, even he couldn't grasp the depth and lore that their future relationship would bring. And Messi and Ronaldo would soon have Goku and Vegeta-esque lore. Growing up watching American sports, I have been lucky enough to watch some of the greatest team sport rivalries. Michigan versus Ohio State, Yankees versus Red Sox, Celtics, Lakers. Yet, they all pale in comparison to Barcelona versus Real Madrid. El Clásico. It literally translates to the classic. They face each other at least twice a year, and every single time, without fail, it is an event. Everyone that watches football, no matter where you are, you stop everything to watch the El Clásico. You might not watch a single other La Liga match the whole year, because literally who watches this shit? We know one of two teams is going to win every single year, but you still watch El Clásico. Ronaldo leaving United for Madrid escalated this rivalry to a different tier. It allowed the two to share proximity for years that before would have been impossible. The 9 years they shared the big stage together are the biggest blessing for any football fan to watch because it was the highest level of football to be played. Like, Real Madrid had two Ballon d'Or winners coming off the bench in their 2-2 matchup in 2012. That 2012 year is special because I believe that is when both teams were simultaneously at their best. This year, they were probably the two best teams in the world, yet neither won the UCL. That should have been the El Clásico final year. That 2-2 match was also when Messi and Ronaldo scored both goals on either side. It's probably the greatest example of band for band in football history. These two individually raised the standard of what an El Clásico was supposed to be. If you were to write a perfect football story with the hero and villain, one would play for Barca and one would play for Madrid. This is probably what the fans felt at the time. Messi was the demon that haunted Madrid as Ronaldo was for Barca. The fans were talking about them like the French commentators were talking about Curry in the Olympics. Got the fans at home talking to their kids like this. In this era, these two teams and these two legendary players represented the different ways you can define success in a football club. In the 9 years they spent together in Spain, Messi and the boys won 6 league titles and 2 UCLs, whereas Ronaldo and friends won 2 league titles and 4 UCLs. But which makes a club better? The tournament that supposedly crowns the best team in Europe and by proxy the whole world for that season, but limits your matchup tournament style and can be much more dependent on outside factors, like, for example, the most clutch goal scorer in the history of the sport coming up with clutch goal after clutch goal, and also some questionable refereeing? Or is it the league that's more impressive? It's a 38-game season where you play every club twice. So in order to rack up those titles consistently like Barcelona did, it represents a consistent floor of greatness week in, week out, year in, year out. It represents Lionel Messi. Even as the squad starts to regress around him, if you have Messi, you can almost guarantee a La Liga title. At the time where they were at their best, even their club's success took on their style of play. I think one thing I have neglected to mention over the course of this video that is quite important is this rivalry is really fueled by the fans. And I'll address this more later, but ultimately, as far as I can tell, Messi and Ronaldo don't actually hate each other in the way that we see in some other great rivalries, right? Do I think they have an individual player rivalry? Absolutely. But it just comes from them competing at the highest level for so long and being the best. But their fans take the rivalry to a different level. I feel like it can be called the greatest. And the biggest divider between the two fan bases is the personality of the two. Their personalities are literally north and south poles. Ronaldo is called the ego because of his borderline narcissism, his obsession with being great and also being considered great. He was already at arguably the third biggest club in the world in United, and he decided he needed more. He decided he needed an even bigger platform to showcase his talent and spread his influence. So he went to Madrid, and he was right. Messi is the homegrown La Masia boy who you never hear about him saying anything to the media about how great he is individually. It's the classic debate on humility and how people with influence should act. Should they be humble and allow others to adorn them with praise while being publicly oblivious to their own greatness like Messi does? Or should they force us to acknowledge their greatness? Because ultimately, when you are as good as Ronaldo, you should let people know. They say that, quote unquote, real kings don't crown themselves. Or how NFL Hall of Fame running back Walter Payton once said, when you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. But I can just as easily argue that when you are Ronaldo and you understand the amount of work you put in to get to the point you're at, and you recognize people trying to disparage your work, not believing you are as good as the work you put in, why not tell them? Why not make others understand your own belief in yourself? Whenever you see athletes come out and be overwhelmingly humble on social media, for example, you'll see this group of people in the comments saying like, I like an athlete that shows humility. What a class act. That's their favorite term, class act. And vice versa. If you see an athlete talk about how great they are, people will say, oh, he's so egotistical. Or even an actor, right? We see the same thing with Timothy Chalamet. We're seeing the same thing with Yamal right now. Even though in Yamal's case, that has a racial subtone. But that's not what this video is about. I'll keep that out for right now. But can you honestly say that either of these ways of approaching greatness are inherently good or bad? In the back of his mind, Messi has always believed he was the best player on every single football pitch he stepped on. And to be honest, he was right every single time he touched the pitch from the years about 2009 to 2021. But he didn't say it out loud. Is that inherently worse than Ronaldo saying it out loud? Because Ronaldo always believed it as well, and he was right every single time he stepped on a pitch from the years 2008 to 2020, with the exception of if Messi was also on that pitch. These two also publicly approached their fame differently. Ronaldo was this big star in Manchester and Madrid, dated models publicly, and really leaned into the rich, handsome star aesthetic, while Messi literally acts like your local choir boy. You never hear about anything other than his long-term relationship with his childhood sweetheart. Messi's reputation and career and the way he approached the game is almost perfect, whereas Ronaldo's is much more bumpy, but to many might seem more realistic. Their different approach to football and fame all comes back to this narrative antithesis that they are. It's literally like a story. They're on opposite sides of a spectrum. The only thing bringing them together, the only commonality they really share, the only reason we compare them is because of how much better they are than everyone else. It really is like Gojo and Sukuna. They alone are the strongest, and that's why they can only be compared to each other. The numbers that Messi and Ronaldo have achieved are so unfathomable. I could just sit here and mention all their records for this next section of the video, and it would probably still go over well. But we've all heard that, so I'm not just going to do that. Let's actually understand what makes them so great. Let's understand why they lap the rest of the competition so severely. And I know I just said I wasn't just going to mention records, but let's mention their most impressive ones right here. Lionel Messi, 8 Ballon d'Ors. Cristiano Ronaldo, 5. Next closest, a couple guys have 3. Total goals, Cristiano Ronaldo, 954 and counting. Lionel Messi, 896 and counting. Next closest player, Pele. Goals, goals plus assists, Lionel Messi, 1,303. Cristiano Ronaldo, 1,213. Next closest player. Honestly, this stat is actually super hard to find, but you get the picture. No one else can compare. In all of these stats, the next best player is a complete non-factor, unless you count Pele's goals that he scored in his backyard, but we'll ignore those ones for now. These players redefine the standards for scoring numbers. I can pull up hundreds of these stats, but the most impressive is Messi's 91 goals in a calendar year and Ronaldo's 4 straight years over 60 goals in a calendar year, which of course, neither of these have ever been done before or since. And they represent the distinction of these two as goal scorers. These are the 2 greatest goal scorers ever, but who is actually better? I think this is the most interesting debate you can have with these two as players because, unfortunately, as an overall attacker and ability to influence the game, Messi is clearly the better player. But it's easier to highlight this because you can argue it's the best part of either of their game and it's where they are most similar. But who's actually better, right? Messi fans say Messi, Ronaldo fans say Ronaldo. But I think if we zero in on the 2 records I mentioned before, we can actually understand this question. One shows a demon, an alien who is capable of doing stuff that no one else can even imagine, scoring goals at a rate that seems comical. And the other is just a model of sheer excellence and consistency. One is an explosion that may never be reached again, and one is a level of consistency and perfection of the art of goal scoring that might also never be reached again. And I do think that is the difference. Ronaldo, you can argue, is the perfect goal scorer. He has no noticeable flaws. But if you were to ask one player to score a goal from you whenever, Messi is simply greater at that. He manufactures goals at will in a way Ronaldo can't. To really understand why Messi is so great as a goal scorer, I want to put into perspective what a friend of mine told me before I started watching football. He was trying to explain to me why Messi was so good, but because I didn't know. And he said, I might not be able to understand, but basically, somehow the ball is just never far away from him. He is always able to keep the ball on him. This is literally an outlier ability that I don't think any other player has been able to replicate to the same level. Whenever we see players that are able to do it, we say, oh, he's like Messi. For example, a Dybala or a Hazard, but nobody is actually able to do it as great as he can. Messi is not the best dribbler ever because of the skills he has when he dribbles. He's the best because of how flawless and efficient he is with the ball. You can't get it off him because he probably couldn't get it off himself if he tried. Combine it with his acceleration and deceleration ability, which I think might actually be inhuman. Like, I actually think of all of his skills and all the skills of all other players ever. This deceleration and acceleration might be the most outlier ability that any player has ever had. And to visualize how insane it is, I'm actually going to briefly compare it to another sport, basketball. Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are 2 of the best players in the world right now. They are 2 of the most skilled players ever, but what really sets them apart as scorers and as talent is that when it comes to acceleration, deceleration, changing pace, which overall makes you a more difficult player to defend because there's less patterns in your play style, they are literally the first players to ever be as good as they are at it. And they are very comparable, but no other player in the history can accelerate and decelerate in the same level that they do. And they score 30 points per game because players are just incapable of timing up their play. So how does this relate to Messi? Okay. If we minimize athleticism to just speed and jumping ability, which I do feel like a lot of people make the mistake of doing, Luke and Shai are pretty mediocre if you look at the grand scheme of the freak athletes in the NBA. I would actually argue that Shai is one of the most athletic players because of his balance and athleticism, but that doesn't really matter because Messi actually is that level of freak athlete with speed and athleticism. The reason Messi is actually so great at everything but specifically goal scoring, is because of his ability to decelerate and change his pace, which no other player is capable of doing to his level. It almost looks inhuman when he does it on the pitch, because he also has almost inhuman levels of acceleration. Luka, who we talked about earlier, is actually slow as fuck. When he accelerates after his deceleration, he's still not moving that fast. When Messi accelerates, he's one of the fastest players to ever play the sport. Watching him do this while the ball still sticks to his feet honestly does not even look real sometimes. It's these combination of skills, the close control dribbling as well as the change of pace, that no player ever has been able to replicate, that makes him the definition of an unstoppable goal scorer. Ronaldo, as I said, is able to do every single finish in the book. His goal catalog is the deepest ever, and the range he can shoot from on either foot has never been replicated. His best qualities are his speed, first and foremost, because at the accomplish a wide variety of finishes. His sheer audaciousness is remarkable. When you combine it with his hunger for goals and selfishness when it comes to him being the one that wants to win the game, you have an on-pitch egomaniac whose sole drive is to score goals. But he's so great at it that he does it each and every game, and that's why he seems to show up in every single clutch moment. I hate intangibles when it comes to ability discussions for players, but I think Ronaldo's mentality is actually applicable here, because the idea that he quote unquote just wants it more actually is true with Ronaldo. He wants to score the goals more than he even wants his own team to win through his own drive to be the best. This makes him the face of consistency when it comes to scoring goals in football. And I think Ronaldo's 4 60 goal in a row seasons is not an inconsequential accomplishment when you compare it to Messi's 91 goals in a calendar year. But unfortunately, I still do think 91 goals is more impressive. The sheer dominance, the level of unstoppability on the pitch for an entire year is different. And the reason I'm sticking to comparing them as goal scorers right now is because when you actually watch them on the pitch, there's clearly a gap. It's hard to watch the games and say that Ronaldo is better, but as a goal scorer, there definitely is an argument depending on what you stake your claim on. The difference is Ronaldo can shoot from anywhere within 40 yards of the goal and in any angle, any finishes, back hills, headers. He could use his butt, right? But Messi can manufacture your team a goal from anywhere on the pitch. It's a different level, and it's evident in the golden boots. Overall, Messi has 6 European golden boots to Ronaldo's 3, and Messi has 5 La Liga golden boots while they were both in the league, compared to 3 from Ronaldo. Another aspect that for me makes these two the outlier GOATs is their era. The 2010s is the greatest era in the history of the sport. So many players, had they been playing at different times, could have easily represented football as the face of the sport and the best players of that era. But in many ways, they go underappreciated because they simply are not Messi or Ronaldo. Let's just look at the Ballon d'Ors, the award that's supposed to crown the best player for that year. Only one person won a Ballon d'Or over them in the entire decade, and many, including me, argue that Modric did not deserve that Ballon d'Or over Ronaldo. But if we just remove the two legends, the two GOATs from existence, Iniesta would have won in 2010. Barca would go back-to-back with Xavi getting his in 2011. It would be a three-peat from Barcelona after Iniesta getting another in 2012. We wouldn't have to hear Frank Ribery complain every couple months about how he was robbed because he would have come home with it in 2013. Honest to God, Manuel Neuer would become only the second goalkeeper to get one in 2014. Neymar would get his first in 2015. Griezmann would get one in 2016. Neymar would get his second in 3 years in 2017. Of course, Modric would keep his in 2018. And Van Dijk would become the first defender since Cannavaro to win in 2019. And this is just a lesson in how much individual trophies sway our perception. Because every player I mentioned is good enough to be considered the greatest ever in their position, with the exception of probably Griezmann and Ribery. Right now, today, but yet none of them have the trophy which we consider the pinnacle of individual achievement in the sport. It would be hard to argue against Iniesta being the greatest midfielder of all time with his club and country success and another 2 Ballon d'Ors stacked on top of it. Of course, if we remove Messi and Ronaldo from existence, things would change drastically, and Barcelona aren't as good, so he might not have the same level of club success, but that's not really what this exercise is about. It's to really visualize the stranglehold these two had on the era. No matter what happened in the year, despite all-time players delivering all-time performances, you can never ignore what Messi and Ronaldo do, and they must receive the plaudits because whatever they did in that year, even if it was a normal year for them, probably had never been done before because they were just operating at so much of a higher level. Even the way we view certain players, if we look past awards and individual quality, there's other players I think we would hold in higher regards if not for their peaks coinciding with the ghosts of the sport. Two great examples for me are Luis Suarez and Kevin De Bruyne. Okay. I want to preface by saying Luis Suarez is a piece of shit. So everything nice I'm about to say about him is about him as a player. Luis Suarez is already viewed as one of the greatest strikers of all time. His goal scoring numbers are crazy, and he is the only player to win a golden boot while Messi and Ronaldo were at their peak. I think he probably is the most skilled striker of all time. He has an ideal skill set. If not number one, him and Ronaldo phenomenon are 1 and 2. He is fast, clinical, is actually a great playmaker as a striker, which is kind of rare, is great holding the ball up, and probably has the greatest goal catalog of all time when it comes to how impressive his finishes are, with the exception of Cristiano Ronaldo, of course. And anyone that has seen JJK understands that Gojo and Sukuna are alone the 2 strongest sorcerers ever. And so every good thing you say about any sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen must always come with the caveat that they are great at it when you compare them to everyone else, but they are honestly worse than Gojo and Sukuna, even if it's their best ability. And that's how the 2010s era is. As great as Luis Suarez was, he has the greatest goal catalog of all time, with the exception of Cristiano Ronaldo. If Ronaldo did not exist, there wouldn't be that direct comparison to Suarez. It might be more commonly accepted to have him as the greatest striker of all time, or maybe number 2 behind R9, because his talent honestly warrants that. Kevin De Bruyne is a genius on the football pitch. He has one of the greatest eyes for passing we've ever seen. He delivers perfect weight of pass every time, and the audaciousness is what's most impressive. The gaps and windows he's willing to test make him one of the greatest passers of all time. He sits at the table 1 of midfielders, and if not, he might be the closest player outside of the already accepted table 1 greats. He honestly might be the greatest chance creator and passer in the history of the game, with the exception of Lionel Messi, of course. Everything that makes De Bruyne one of the greatest players of all time, and my personal favorite player, Messi does better, while also being the greatest goal scorer ever. But imagine if he had that greatest chance creator title. He would probably be undisputed table 1. And then, of course, the greatest victim of comparison. I must preface by saying, of course, Neymar's career has first and foremost been diminished by injuries. But the weight of expectation is what has ruined his reputation in the public eye. His career went down because of injuries, his inability to stay on the pitch consistently. But the way we view him is unfortunately altered and skewed by our own perception of Messi and Ronaldo. We all know about the fact that he has the highest average match rating in a season and a career in the top 5 leagues. But let's not even talk about his peak for a second. Neymar has incredible longevity. He first placed on a Ballon d'Or list in 2011 and last placed on the list in 2021. That's literally 11 seasons of being great. Then you watch him play, and it's hard to even fathom the things he's capable of doing with the ball. probably the second greatest dribbler ever, behind you know who, one of the best goal scoring and playmaking wingers, while also being an unstoppable chance creator. His player profile is one of a top 5 player ever. And while he did not reach that level consistently because of injuries, if we look at what he actually did, it's still worthy of maybe a top 15 player ever. But we don't always view him like that because at his peak, he was always compared to two outlier players, the likes of which the game has never seen before and may never see again. All of these players I just named are legends of the game, but if they weren't near non-factors when compared to the greatness of the two GOATs, we would know how truly great they are. This is why Messi and Ronaldo have a very interesting rivalry. Unlike other rivalries, it is not actually driven by hate. It is driven by circumstance, but it is elevated by everything surrounding it. The two fiercest competitors in the history of the sport competing at the highest level, embodying the two different sides of being great, allowing the fans to align their own identity with either one of these players. Two people, and in this case, characters driven only by a drive to be great that they have carried since their youth, and only driven to be greater by the other because they are the only ones who can register each other's greatness. If one lacks, the others will surpass, and therefore they must stay sharp. I know I did say that Messi is the clear better player than Ronaldo, but don't let people convince you that that means they can't have a player rivalry to the highest level. Though Messi is better, that's not how success is always measured. When Ronaldo left Madrid, the two were level on Ballon d'Ors at 5, with Ronaldo having won the previous two before Modric. This is competition at the highest level. Now, Messi would go on to put up more great seasons after Ronaldo left Spain, and Ronaldo kind of regressed a little bit at Juventus and United. And Messi might have robbed Haaland in 2023. I'm still not sure about that to this day, and that's how we get the disparity of 8-5 Ballon d'Ors. I think we can look back now and say that Messi is better, but when you see two players performing at the highest level simultaneously, it is impossible not to compare them and see who's better. So don't ever be swayed by the agenda besmirching Ronaldo and saying that his greatest achievement is being compared to Messi, because Ronaldo should and will have a legacy and leave an impact on the game that has just as much weight as Messi has. But you can see everything surrounding this rivalry, the mystique builds it up, therefore making it the greatest. It doesn't always have to have hate involved. It's merely legendary competition. And us as football fans might receive one final blessing. If both Argentina and Portugal top their group, which they are expected to do, they have the potential to meet in the World Cup semifinal, which my own personal headcanon says will be the most watched non-World Cup final match in history. And we will be lucky enough to bear witness to the final installment of a legendary player rivalry on the grandest stage in sports. The final chapter of two greats who continue to push each other to becoming better and better. It will be the final saga of the two greatest players ever facing each other, and the final installment of the greatest rivalry to ever behold.